What is the one thing that we could brainstorm such that would make everything else easier and or unnecessary? Chris.
My question, I know you can't give me legal advice. My question is about contracts and just what in particular, at least you need to make sure you have covered, don't have covered. Really what I do is wait till something goes wrong and then, all right, now that goes in the contract. I've had to put stuff like, if you don't like the color, we can change the color for you at an additional charge that's not included. Yeah, just in general, is there maybe a philosophy or a way to think about this or what?
Oh, I'm glad you asked those questions. Yes. Before I answer that though, where did these customers come from? What was the source? Do you recall of some of these specific customers?
One
They're like,
was through Google, Nextdoor. Yeah, I'm trying to think of ones in particular where I've had problems. One through Painter's Choice.
okay. So these
Come to
were
mind.
cold leads from either Google, Nextdoor, or paid lead. Okay.
Hmm.
So no criticism. This is common. This is very common. So what do we do? Essentially, they weren't from Rotary, right? They weren't from BNI. They weren't from Chamber. They weren't from repeat customers, and they weren't from referrals, which they usually aren't. So instead, what do? We've got to get started with, sometimes we get started with some cold leads. Now, ideally, we want to go to networking so that they're warmer leads to the referrals. And usually they're also quality. The quality of the leads are much better than Google or paid leads. However, if we're still getting some cold leads or going after cold leads, then what we do is we just make sure that we pre-qualify really well. Pre-qualify really well. So it comes back to the principle when somebody says, "Hey, what's your guys' policy on clocking out on time or using a company vehicle, or I need a policy for language, or I need a policy for dress code." Usually that's an indicator that they're not hiring for character, right? So in the same respect, we need to make sure that we're working for character, people who have character, right? And so a lot of times, like when I offer strategy calls, and a lot of times I offer strategy calls, I don't offer them. So I offer them to one, I want to give value. And then two, it's not just to offer them some of our services, whether it's mastermind or coaching or just the cafe, but I'm interviewing them just as much as they're checking me out. And I don't invite everybody to a mastermind group. Because if you notice, like you guys are awesome, right? Everybody in here, I don't know that one person would say I have a problem with somebody else in here. Everybody in here is just fantastic. And I'm very particular about that. Same thing with painting customers. I don't want to have to put my team in with difficult people, with unreasonable people, with C clients, right? So while I'm estimating and looking at their home, I'm also checking them out. I'm also interviewing them. Are there any red flags, right? Do I get any sense that they're not nice? And if that's the case, I'm going to find a polite way to bow out at the end for your project. And I'll follow through with the proposal and whatnot and say, unfortunately, we're not able to paint it for until, I don't know, 2035. You guys available in 10 years or 11 years, whatever it might be. I'm exaggerating that point, but I'll find a way to refer them to somebody else. So I would say make sure you pre-qualify really well, especially if you're using some cold leads. Double up on your networking to generate warm referrals, right? And protect your culture. Then you won't need as much small print. In fact, when you've got this locked in, you don't even need a signed contract anymore. I never cared about a signed contract proposal. I wrote it up just so everything was in writing. I never asked them to sign it. Sometimes they say, "You want to sign it?" I'm like, "Nah." As long as I got their deposit, I really didn't care if they signed the contract,
Yeah. Steve,
right?
I can attest to that. I'm working on two separate over $60,000 jobs right now. I haven't signed a contract on either one of them. One's a house, one's a residential. My proposals have zero fine print in them. If I'm going to be going over colors, I'll make sure they have the color up front and they like it. I've never had an issue because we're pre-qualifying our clients. We work with almost solid A clients all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know Bryce was talking last year. He had some issues and he put in some different things. And in different geographic areas, you have a bunch more clients. I get that. But when I pre-qualify my clients, I'm not worrying about it. I referred away one couple weeks ago. This lady had somebody paint her brick house, did a horrible job. And I told her it would cost way more than it's worth to you to have me do it. I referred her to another painter in town and he got the job. She loves me. He loves me. I don't have to mess with a headache. It was really cool. Didn't make anybody mad by saying, I don't want to do your job, and didn't have to have her go and try to search for another painter. I gave her a painter right then and there.
Mhm.
He's got the job.
Is that helpful, Chris?
Yeah, it's really helpful. It's actually not what I was expecting, but even
Yeah.
it answers the question I had of, to some extent, it doesn't really matter what's in the contract. You know what I
It's
mean?
true.
And I think
Yep.
that's what you're pointing towards. So
Mhm.
it's definitely helpful.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep. Because if we don't hire for character and if we don't pre-qualify really well, we can't put enough policies in place to box their character in. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
beliefs supersede laws. Every time I learned this when I was 15, washing dishes in a Chinese restaurant, and I'll leave it at that. Beliefs supersede laws. It doesn't matter what your laws are; their beliefs supersede them. Okay, I've never eaten Chinese food since, or Asian food. Okay. April loves it. She knows some of the stories, but I don't share them because I don't want to ruin it for everybody else who enjoys it.